First up, the disclaimer. Nothing in this video is financial advice. Please pause the video now and read the disclaimer in full. I could simply make a video talking about how I believe Bitcoin's near its bottom and this is an incredible buying opportunity, but I'd like to keep things a bit more neutral, which is why I want to put forward arguments both for and against Bitcoin now being at its bottom. To do that, we're going to start off with the negative and finish up with the positive. So first up, why could Bitcoin go even lower? Argument number one is simply that cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin have no inherent value whatsoever. Therefore, even though Bitcoin has already dropped significantly in value, according to this theory, Bitcoin should go to zero. If it has no inherent value, any price whatsoever means it's overvalued. Personally, I don't buy into this. I believe there is inherent value in many crypto asset projects out there. Cryptocurrencies as an individual topic are more interesting, as some people say Bitcoin will never be a good store of value. To them, I would say that I believe Bitcoin will have inherent value because the industry is going to be successful and many of these projects will want to peg themselves to the most secure blockchain, and at this point in time at least, that is Bitcoin. Therefore, I do not agree that cryptos have no inherent value. Argument number two is that this has been the biggest bull run in crypto history, and therefore it makes sense you would have the biggest bear run following it. We've seen a ridiculous cycle caused by ICOs which produced virtually no real value with very few users between all of them combined. With this in mind, the fundamentals behind the bull run, i.e. being triggered by the ICO market, were even more crazy than the factors which triggered previous bull runs. Hence, it's not a crazy thought to believe that the resulting bear run from this cycle could be more extreme than others in the past. Those are the reasons for negativity. Now let's move on to the reasons for positivity. I view this market cycle from two sides. Number one, there's the technical side, purely related to prices. Number two, there's the fundamental side, talking about whether these valuations actually match the fundamentals behind the projects and the aspect of whether institutional money is going to begin entering the space. Let's begin with the technical side. If we look at Bitcoin's most extreme crash in history, we can see it was an 87% dip from its peak and it lasted 411 days. Currently, Bitcoin is 82% below its previous peak, and this bear run has lasted 345 days. So in other words, Bitcoin has now dropped nearly as much in value as its previous most extreme crash. And on top of that, the time frame is very similar as well. If we apply those exact numbers, we would actually find that if we had the same exact cycle, so that's another 87% drop, then Bitcoin would hit a low of $2,600, and that would occur 411 days after the previous peak on February 1st. So if history were to repeat itself, that tells us that Bitcoin is now near its bottom, but still could fall slightly further. Another useful chart to consider is Bitcoin's logarithmic regression chart. What does that mean? Essentially, it's an attempt to plot Bitcoin's long-term price. When Bitcoin's price drops below this regression line, you often see a bull run. When it goes miles above, you often see a bear run. Currently, Bitcoin's regression line tells us it should be around about $4,800. Many people were expecting when it hit that value, we would see a bounce. We didn't see that occur, and we're now sat at $3,750. What does that tell us? If we look out and take a long-term perspective based on Bitcoin's previous prices, this indicates Bitcoin may now finally be undervalued. Obviously, these are simply charts based on previous price movements, which don't always dictate future price movements, but they are some of the better indicators that we have. Next up is the fundamental side. What could potentially trigger another bull run in the next year? For me, there are two aspects to this. Number one, STOs, security tokens, and number two, institutions finally entering the market. I firmly believe that when we look at the market 10 years from now, we're going to find security tokens far outweigh utility tokens in terms of their overall market cap. Security tokens are a far more recognizable asset, which we can already value. Utility tokens, on the other hand, are often speculative, and currently we don't really know how to value them. With this in mind, as security tokens begin to become more prevalent within the market, I think it's going to be very positive for the overall market sentiment. We've seen some projects such as Polymath entering the space to allow for the next wave of security token offerings. However, the infrastructure isn't really there yet. There's several more things which have to be built out before security token offerings can become commonplace. So I believe over the next 6 months or so, we're going to see a lot of that infrastructure being put in place. And with that, we could have another bull run simply because we're going to have assets which have real inherent value. And importantly, institutions are more likely to invest into these assets because they can value them. They're less likely to invest into highly speculative utility tokens. And speaking of institutions entering the market, that's the other reason I believe we could be near a bottom. There are many institutions now either making their way into the market already, or the infrastructure is being built out. For example, we have Bakkt, which will be launching the first physically delivered Bitcoin futures on December 12th. That is very soon, and it's a big step for the crypto market. We also have Fidelity, one of the largest players globally, entering the crypto space when they're going to be launching their own trading desk and custody solution. That should allow for many more institutions to enter the market. We have the first Swiss crypto ETP, which has already been launched just in the last week. That involves a basket of cryptos, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, and Litecoin. And I've looked at the trading volumes today. They're around about $500,000. That's not a lot, but bear in mind, it is just the first week for this product. An ETP isn't quite as good as an ETF, but it is not that far off, and it is certainly one more step in order to getting the first ETF approved. I'm actually going to be releasing a video explaining the ETP shortly for all of you, as I believe it's a big development in the crypto space. And finally, we have the Van Eck and CBOE ETFs, which could be approved in early next year. There is obviously a chance they could get rejected, and certainly the recent market manipulation from the people behind the Bitcoin Cash hash wars have not helped the ETF to be approved. They've added to some of the SEC's concerns. So we may not see that get approved, but based on the other institutions entering the market, I don't think we need it. I think a Bitcoin ETF is just a matter of time, but it may take a couple of years. The thing is, institutions can still get into the market very easily well before that day occurs. So while a Bitcoin ETF would be huge news, we could also see a bull run occur very easily without it. At this point, I want to say, please make your own decisions. This isn't financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. And you have to remember, I am just offering my own personal opinions based on the market research I carry out. There are many people saying completely different things, and no one knows who is correct. I have my personal opinion. I am nowhere near arrogant enough to simply believe that because I think it's correct, it is going to come true. Having said all of that, you watch these videos because you want to hear my personal opinion. Well, my personal opinion can be seen from the fact that I have recently just bought more. I've actually added to my stash of Bitcoin by buying back into the market when Bitcoin crossed around about $4,000. So personally, I think we are relatively near a bottom. Having said that, I can also see cryptos going lower. I wouldn't be that surprised if we actually saw a 2K Bitcoin. Sounds crazy, I know, but then I fully believe after that, we're going to see another bull run, and we're going to look back someday and say the difference between a $3,500 Bitcoin and a $2,000 Bitcoin is so insignificant in the long term that it wasn't really worth trying to predict the exact moment we hit the bottom. I also think it's somewhat of a silly idea to believe you can predict the exact bottom. We might drop another 30-40%. We also might increase 100% tomorrow. It's really impossible to say. I'm quite happy as long as I believe we're near the bottom. And based on previous bull and bear markets, it appears we are somewhat near that bottom. But please remember, I'm not investing from a short-term perspective. This is essentially a long-term binary bet. I'm either going to be correct and Bitcoin's going to go far higher, or I'm going to be completely wrong and Bitcoin may go to zero. And if that is the case, I am happy to lose the money I've invested. Well, maybe not happy, but I'm certainly okay with it, and at this point in my life, I'm willing to take that risk. You have to consider how much risk you're willing to take based on your current situation within your life. The next question is where to invest. What looks like a good opportunity within the market? The ICO market is going to be ruled out instantly. Probably not the best place to be putting your money. For me personally, I think Bitcoin is considered the crypto safe haven, if there is such a thing in this volatile market. Therefore, it looks like the best option. And I'm actually someone who historically hasn't held that much Bitcoin. But in the current market, it looks like a good option.